The neon lights of the corner pocket internet cafe cast an eerie glow, reflecting off John's distracted eyes as he scrolled idly through strange sites on the deep web. His curiosity had grown insatiable lately, driving him nightly to probe the uncharted corners of the dark web, using this cafe's anonymous connection. A notification pinged, announcing an impending data transfer from an unknown address. John clicked hesitantly, wary of potential malware. But instead of corrupting his machine, the download completed harmlessly, depositing only an encrypted file labeled README onto his desktop. Frowning, John opened the file to find garbled symbols and a vague message. "Stop it, before it's too late." What could this cryptic clue possibly mean? An odd prank or something more ominous? He messaged a contact on an underground chat forum for insights, but received no useful responses, only heightened unease. As John hesitated, his phone rang with an unknown number. "Don't leave the cafe," warned a stern female voice, then hung up without identifying herself or her affiliation. Alone in the crowded room, a chill crawled up John's spine. Who was watching him, and why? His thoughts fractured when a new message popped up. From David, his friend who vanished without a trace months ago. Panicked words blurred across John's screen. "If you have the cipher, run now. They're coming for you." David's paranoid warning set John's nerves ablaze. Had something sinister befallen his friend? And what was this cipher that now implicated John as well? Before he could respond, the cafe doors slammed shut with a deafening boom. Spinning around, John froze in horror. Masked figures closed in on unsuspecting patrons, sedating them one by one with tranquilizer guns. In moments, the room transformed into a nightmarish scene. John ducked behind the counter, pulse hammering as muffled screams rang out. Peering through a gap, John witnessed inconceivable images that burrowed into his mind's eye. The masked men loaded unconscious bodies onto unmarked vans, parked outside, under cover of darkness. A vast conspiracy was unfolding before his eyes, and John now harbored its ominous secret. Trapped amid unfolding chaos, John realized with dread that he was inescapably ensnared in something far larger and more disturbing than he could have ever imagined. With the cafe now empty, John emerged cautiously from his hiding spot. The doors had resealed behind the vans, trapping him inside the darkened building. Through the front windows, John watched the last vehicle pull away into night. An eerie stillness fell as the truth dawned. He was now a fugitive, pursued by unknown forces. But who were they, and what did they want with the innocents taken? John scoured the silent cafe for clues, hoping to understand David's warning. On a discarded computer, he found the encrypted symbols from the mysterious file still on screen. Checking his phone, John saw the panicked message had vanished without a trace like David himself. A creak made John freeze, instincts screaming danger. He ducked behind the counter again as heavy footsteps approached. Peering through the gap, John glimpsed masked men returning to inspect the cafe, guns drawn. His racing mind gambled on one desperate possibility. He must flee while they were distracted. Crawling on hands and knees, John stealthily crossed the open floor towards the back exit. Just a few more feet. A board squeaked loudly under his palm. The men's heads snapped around, flashlights spearing the dark. "There! By the doors!" one shouted. Bullets ricocheted off metal as John threw himself through the emergency exit. He tumbled onto damp asphalt and sprinted down the alley. Gunfire echoed behind him as torches gave chase. John sped through back streets, dodging between dumpsters for cover. The men were larger, but he knew these streets. A lifetime evading bullies had taught him to lurk in shadows. Slipping around a corner, John slowed to catch his breath, listening for pursuers. Silence. He had lost them for now. But escaping was only the first step. Now John needed allies to unravel the cryptic clues and stay one step ahead of the masked group hunting him. Beth, his friend since childhood, was his only option for help, if she didn't betray him first. Sneaking through back alleys, John arrived at Beth's apartment building. He tapped out their coded knock and waited, pulse racing. After an agonizing delay, the peephole darkened. Beth's anxious green eyes widened, seeing John on the threshold. "Let me in, quick," John hissed. "We're not safe anywhere anymore. I need your help." John explained the night's unbelievable events as Beth locked her apartment door, worry lines creasing her forehead. "This can't be real," she breathed. "What have you gotten yourself into?" "I wish I knew," John replied grimly. He opened his laptop to show the encrypted symbols still on screen. "David said this is the key, but it makes no sense. Can you help crack it?" Beth studied the strange character strings thoughtfully. "This code is complex, but between the two of us." Her fingers flew across the keyboard as John peered over her shoulder. Code breaking had long been their shared hobby. Little did they know its urgency now. Hours passed tensely as they tested algorithms and substitutions, scraping for understanding. "Wait, try this." John pointed to a repeating symbol pair. Beth typed, and an English letter suddenly resolved. Ret. More patterns emerged under their watchful eyes. By dawn, entire words had crystallized through guesswork and logic. Experiment. Subjects. Disappearances, Beth murmured as she transcribed. John felt sick, cold dread pooling in his stomach. Could David and the others have been test subjects in some twisted project? A loud crash jolted them from their decrypting trance. Boots pounded up the stairs outside as Beth yanked John behind the couch. Peering through the blinds, they saw masked figures kicking in neighbors' doors. The hunters had tracked John here. His heart dropped. "They're searching apartments. We have to run now." Gathering their proof, the friends fled through the back, breath misting in the chill morning air. Ducking erratic patrols, they headed for the university. Its crowds might shield them until a new plan formed. As they emerged onto a bustling street, a sleek black car rolled up. Tinted windows rolled down to reveal the stern woman from John's phone call. "Get in. We've been expecting you." John froze, stunned. Had this mysterious woman toyed with him all along? Beth squeezed his arm nervously, but her eyes held newfound steel. "We're not going anywhere until you explain what's really happening," she challenged the shadowy figure. For now, John's only choice was to play along and hope he wasn't delivering them into further danger. The car sped through city streets as John and Beth demanded answers. But the woman, who introduced herself only as Jane, remained cryptic. "We're an organization dedicated to human progress, for the greater good. But rogue elements hijacked our work for unethical aims. Like experimenting on people," John said. Jane sighed. "I can't say more yet. Trust that I'm on your side and want to help." The car pulled into an abandoned warehouse. "This safe house will keep you hidden until the situation's resolved," Jane said, ushering them inside. Something felt off. John grabbed Beth's hand and bolted, sprinting into the surrounding woods as shouts rang out behind them. Gunshots echoed through the trees as masked men pursued. "We can't outrun bullets forever," Beth panted. They darted down an embankment, taking shelter in a drainage pipe. Muffled voices drew closer. A distant engine roared, growing louder. Headlights appeared, speeding straight at their hideout. John shoved Beth out just in time as the vehicle rammed into the pipe, collapsing the entrance. They crawled out amid the wreckage, no pursuers in sight. Exhausted, the friends stumbled onto a country road as dawn broke. A passing trucker gave them a lift into the next town. There, they discovered their images splashed across missing posters, plastered everywhere. "We're not safe anywhere linked to our past lives," John realized grimly. After a hasty shop for supplies, they headed into the dense forest, leaving no trail. Deep in the wilderness, they paused to eat and regroup. Jane sold us out. "We're on our own now," Beth said. But another puzzle piece fell into place. These woods surrounded a remote research facility, matching clues from the decoded file. Their only options were to evade capture or uncover the sinister truth. Under cover of night, they began infiltrating the complex. The forest shrouded John and Beth as they stalked the facility's perimeter. Barbed wire fences and security cameras watched every approach, but a blind spot beckoned near the secondary generators. During a patrol's gap, they bolted across and vaulted over, dropping silently into the shadows of a supply yard. Crates packed the area, the ideal cover for sneaking closer unnoticed. Slithering between containers, they spied the main building emerging through the tree line, a sprawling research complex patrolled by armed guards. "This must be where David and the others were taken," Beth whispered. As they pondered an entrance, shouting erupted ahead. A fray was underway, the perfect diversion. They sprinted from hiding and darted inside an open delivery bay just as gunfire crackled in the distance. Rushing down sterile hallways between fire alarms, they passed a window into an operating theater. Through the glass, John froze in horror. Unconscious figures lay on metal tables while masked surgeons cut them open. Beth tugged him away urgently. "We have to contact the underground and take this place down. Now." Her defiance stirred John's resolve. Following surviving schematics on Beth's phone, they hunted for the server room controlling security. Bursting through a door, they found not servers, but Jane and her cronies waiting with tranquilizer guns. Right on time, Jane smiled coldly. "We've been expecting you." She gestured ahead as cell doors slid open. David and others imprisoned inside, experiments etched on their mutilated bodies. "No." John choked, betrayed tears falling. "You did this." Just then, an explosion rocked the hallways. Underground rebels had launched their attack. Jane cursed and fled with her remaining men as prisoners began vanishing one by one to safety. John and Beth had succeeded in dismantling the sinister operation at last. Fear and adrenaline fueled John as he chased Jane's fleeing form through the smoke-filled complex. She wouldn't escape after the unspeakable crimes committed here. Bursting through exit doors, he saw her leap into a waiting helicopter on the landing pad. John sprinted and grabbed a tethered rope dangling from the skids just as it lifted off. As the chopper gained altitude, John clung desperately to whipping cord. Inside, Jane aimed a revolver at his white-knuckled grip. A shot rang out, but missed. They reached a stalemate. Her advantage was severed if he fell. Through waves of nausea, John gazed down on the uprising unfolding below. Rebel soldiers engaged the last researchers in a fierce firefight among the burning buildings as freed prisoners escaped to safety. A forceful gust rocked the craft, granting John a moment to grapple onto the skid. Struggling closer despite Jane's kicks, he grasped her weapon hand, wrestling for control. Another shot discharged harmlessly into the night. With an animal howl, Jane kicked John's grip loose, sending him sliding toward the open door as resistance flared beneath. At the precipice, their eyes met. Hers a raging tempest, his a stoic calm. "Let it end," John said simply. Her crazed sneer crumpled into defeat. With a sob, Jane tossed the gun aside and surrendered, defeated at last. As cheers arose from below, the forces of justice had finally prevailed over madness and shadow. In subsequent trials, scientists were sentenced for unthinkable crimes against humanity. The charred ruins now lay reclaimed by nature. David and survivors found solace in rebuilding lives free from fear and oppression. As for John, steadfast courage had liberated them all from shadows, seeking to ensnare mankind in darkness forevermore. The light of truth could not be overcome. It was just another boring Thursday night. I scrolled aimlessly through Reddit, hoping to find something to spark even a shred of interest. When nothing caught my eye, I decided to take a walk on the wild side, exploring the dark corners of the internet I usually avoided. I'd heard rumors about lurking in the deep web. Maybe there I could uncover something stranger than fiction. A few clicks in, I reached an unindexed site resembling endless linked pages in an abandoned library. The URLs were nonsensical strings of letters and numbers. My instincts said to turn back, but curiosity got the better of me as usual. I clicked deeper. Most pages were garbled messes or long dead ends. Discouragement set in until a thumbnail caught my peripheral vision, a flashing play button amid a tangle of code. I hesitated, then clicked, half expecting a virus alert. Instead, a grainy video loaded labeled "Only Live." At first, it seemed to show an empty warehouse. Then, movement in the corner of the frame revealed disoriented figures coming to, shielding eyes from painful fluorescent lights. 7 people in total stumbled in their confusion, until a burst of static erupted from overhead speakers. They froze in alert fear as a voice distorted beyond recognition echoed throughout the cavernous room. "Welcome to the game. You have been selected to participate in a little entertainment for our viewers. Around you lie weapons of varying lethality. You have 1 hour to battle to the last standing, or you all forfeit your lives. May the odds be ever in your favor." A loud buzzer cut off the announcement. Chaos erupted as understanding hit. Panicked shrieks mixed with defiant shouts as they scrambled for the crude blades and clubs strewn about. 2 collided immediately in a flurry of untrained blows. My heart raced. Was this real? Some twisted prank? I couldn't look away, even as the first struck a lucky shot and sent the second crumpling soundlessly to the stained concrete. Revulsion and fascination wrestled within me. Who were these people? What depraved corner of humanity sponsored such barbarism? As more joined the fray, survival instincts took over. Blood darkened the floor, and by some moral failing, I watched with detachment, cataloging minor details to convince myself it wasn't real. 3 remained after 15 gruesome minutes. A wiry teenager wielding a pipe, an injured yet furious woman clutching a rusted blade, and a hulking man who had knocked out his first victim with a single hammer strike. They circled warily, waiting for an opening. I held my breath, willing one of the underdogs to win this horrific lottery. The woman lunged first with a primal scream, and the game was down to 2. When the teen landed a blow to his larger opponent's knee, dropping him with a howl, I gasped with a thrill as unsettling as the video itself. Triumph and terror warred on the boy's gaunt face. He raised his weapon for the final strike, then froze at a crackle from above. "Congratulations, you are the winner of this match. However, the game is not yet over." The transmission abruptly cut out, leaving me drained and reeling in the glow of my laptop screen. I had witnessed true horror and felt ascendant, in a way, behind this veil of anonymity. Revulsed by my reaction, I slammed the laptop closed, as if that could undo the darkness I had let seep through the fiber optic cable into my ordinary world. But it was too late to unsee what had already taken root in the pit of my restless mind. The empty apartment felt more isolating than usual that night. Sleep evaded me as images from the stream flickered behind closed eyes. I gave up around 3 and booted up my laptop again, dragging fingernails down my face. My thumb hovered over the browser back button, hesitating to re-enter that dark domain. Curiosity outweighed reason, yet again. I had to know what became of the teenage victor. With a few clicks, the ominous video player reloaded right where I left off. The warehouse looked even more dreary in the early hours, illuminated now by a single hanging bulb, swinging gently above a lone figure, catching his breath in the center. My attention shifted to the distorted voice, resonating with false sincerity. A well-earned victory, but rest assured the game is far from over. Your next opponents have been picked for your particular skills. I'm sure they look forward to the challenge. You may take your time to recuperate. Their arrival is imminent. The teen glared fearfully around, clutching his pipe with shaking hands. Without warning, twin doors burst open at the far end, spilling in two hulking brutes armed with cricket bats. A chilling yell echoed as they charged with jaws clenched and murder in their eyes. A brief scuffle ensued before the larger assailant struck a crippling blow to the boy's leg. He crumpled with an agonized howl, curling instinctively to shield his vulnerable form. His partner wasted no time laying into exposed flesh with a savage frenzy. Bones cracked loud and clear through tinny speakers. My stomach churned, yet still I couldn't tear my eyes from the savagery unfolding in grainy focus. Blood darkened the concrete anew as the teen's wails diminished to whimpers. Then silence amid a haze of pulverized meat. The feed lingered on his twisted remains long after the pair sauntered off victoriously, presumably to collect winnings from their shadowy masterminds. A strangled sob escaped my throat, horrifyingly loud in the desolate flat. I grasped helplessly at my laptop, scrambling to erase what could not be unseen, as if tearing out optic nerves would undo the trauma seared there forever. My breath came short and painful, mind reeling from implications of what I had let in like a parasite under my skin. Those were real people suffering real torment, and I contributed to it with every second I indulged the sick compulsion to consume their humanity. No, worse than that, I delighted in it, cheered for more depravity with every savage twist. I sagged defeated against the wall, overcome by waves of nausea and self-loathing. Hours passed before rational thought re-emerged through the haze of panic and guilt. A chilling realization struck that my curiosity may have been the very thing that sealed the teen's dreadful fate. Did they pick up on viewers to target in further matches? I shuddered to imagine what new terrors the next transmission could unveil. There had to be a way to shut it down before any more innocent lives paid for bloodsport entertainments. I steeled myself to hunt for answers, though part of me dredged only deeper involvement in that dark and deadly domain. I searched tirelessly over the next few days for any clues to end the depraved streaming ring. With each dead-end link, my obsession grew, as did paranoia that unseen puppeteers targeted impressionable viewers like prey. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by fitful dozes plagued by vivid nightmares of bloody warehouses. By the third night, restless fingers drew me back to their domain of their own accord. The live feed had just begun as I arrived, showing two new disoriented players awakening in the familiar grim setting. I peered closely, probing for hints to unravel this sinister puzzle. One was an older man with salt and pepper hair, eyes dark with weariness beyond his years. The other appeared even younger than the boy from before. No more than 15, face-betraying childish terror beneath bravado. As rules echoed from overhead, I wondered in vain what circumstance or misfortune brought these souls to this place. Chaotic violence ensued as usual. Yet try as I might to detach, my heart ached for their plight. The teen lasted longer than expected, but attrition overcame even his scrappy efforts eventually. Blood pooled thick around his still form, bringing unwanted flashes of the first victim to mind. I lingered long after most anonymous viewers surely moved on, fixated on each minuscule detail as if answers lay encoded between pixels. Unsettled, I began combing archive streams from the beginning, searching for repetitive motifs or recognizable backdrops that offered any insight to their true operations. Days blended into a haze of screens and stale caffeine. I lost precious hours, piecing together distorted clues, though more questions arose with each new finding. Places resembled but were not identical. purposeful misdirects to thwart would, be rescuers, or merely different venues to maximize suffering? Phantom. Sounds disturbed vacuous nights. Hints of madness seeping in alongside images better consigned to nightmares. There, in the twisting halls of my subconscious, the games continued unabated before staring. Nameless spectators. Weapons rose and fell without mercy or remorse, flowing ever onward in a surreal choreography of bloodsport. By the seventh stream, exhaustion and sanity warred within for dominance. Yet stillness meant facing my culpability in passively fueling that depraved enterprise. And so the hunt continued, an endless feedback loop sealing my fate as inextricably as theirs within that inescapable cycle. Somewhere in those twisting digital labyrinths lay answers. If only my weakening mind and body could unravel the intricate knots before the games took their own terrible toll. The lines blurred further each transmission. I lost track of sleep and wake. That hellish domain became my only constant companion. Fragmented dreams merged seamlessly into the waking nightmare unfolding endlessly on screen. My days drifted by in a haze of research and recollection, trying vainly to crack this maddening cryptography through sheer force of desperation. Any leads dead, ended more complex riddles pointing nowhere, and Ouroboros consuming itself eternally. Yet new clues emerged tonight that stopped my heart. The latest victims awoke in a decaying complex, strikingly similar to blueprints from an abandoned factory near my neighborhood. Impossible odds, surely, but doubt festered like poison in my frayed psyche. As usual, I lingered after most viewers moved on to next to meaningless distractions, rewatching subtle details on loop. Then it happened. A fleeting glimpse through grimy windows revealing a warped reflection of the night sky, unmistakably matching my city's light pollution signature. A strangled gasp tore from my lungs at the chilling implication. Was it truly coincidence placing innocence in my very backyard? Or had my rabid fixation painted a target where none existed before? I scrabbled desperately for rationality amid panic's rising tide. Though more feasible, leads still arose elsewhere. Paranoia burrowed its roots deep henceforth. Phantom presences haunted empty streets and crowded rooms alike under my new distorting lens. Nameless eyes peered back from every reflective surface, judging, assessing, waiting. The world closed in, reality warping into a funhouse mirror reflection of that sinister broadcast, bleeding into day-to-day banality. I started at innocuous sounds, scanning crowds for familiar faces that could be so easily plucked away next without warning or reason. Sleep refused to provide solace either, with insomnia morphing my sanctuary into a theater for experimental night. Terrors. I took long, winding routes home to shake hypothetical pursuers, rarely leaving sight of people for fear of the monsters lurking in my periphery. So I retreated further into the one certainty remaining, combing the archives for purpose that eluded my grasp like water. Yet no answers arose, only deeper questions forming a noose slowly closing around my frayed consciousness. How long until that spectral game encompassed my world entirely, sealing my inevitable participation as penance for bearing witness to others' suffering? The end grew nearer with each nightmarish transmission. I had reached the brink. The lines between reality and the ghastly broadcasts fully dissolved under constant trauma. Sleep refused to provide respite from horrors invading waking life at every turn. As my world collapsed into an endless loop of fear and futility, salvation arrived in the darkest of forms. The latest stream revealed faces hauntingly familiar. Neighbors whose chance greetings once provided fleeting normalcy, now staring back wide-eyed and panicked. Seeing their terrified pleading sent a bolt of clarity lancing through the fog. These were no longer random souls suffering twisted games. They were people I knew subjected to unspeakable torments because of me, Guilt and rage tore through my shredded psyche with renewed vigor. I scrambled from my sickbed, fueled by manic determination to put an end to this madness before more innocence paid the price. With trembling hands, I typed furious queries, combing past clues for long-buried leads. At last, one encrypted file contained coordinates too detailed to be fabrication. Darkness had fallen by the time I arrived, breaths coming in, gasping clouds against the bitter chill. Broken windows leered from what remained of worn brick walls, a haunting reflection of my crumbling mental state. Dread seized my heart at muffled cries resonating from shadowy depths within. I steeled, shaking limbs and crept through jagged openings into the belly of that hellish hive. Dusty halls twisted endlessly, each turn threatening to seal me within these walls forever. Participant at last in the games that haunted my every thought. More than once, I startled awake from fitful microsleeps, unsure if reality remained. At the nadir of hope, a grating noise guided my faltering steps. Harsh light spilled from a crack in heavy doors, banishing nightmares, if only for a moment. I peered through to witness my neighbors huddled terrified in a filthy cell, facing down leering challengers armed with rusty implements. Rage consumed rationality in a searing blaze. With an animalistic yell, I shouldered the decrepit barrier with renewed vigor until rusty hinges gave way with a thunderous crash. Mayhem erupted as challengers scrambled in shocked disarray. I grabbed the first makeshift weapon at hand, a jagged pipe, and waded into the fray with abandon, striking down all in my path. When crimson, flecked clarity returned, only myself and traumatized captives remained among the aftermath. Sirens wailed in the distance. Homing in on some anonymous tip, I sank to the floor, gazing upon a sea of faces, some familiar, most total strangers, and found solace in saving lives, however many it took to purge these demons at last. The games were over. We had reclaimed our fractured humanity. I rubbed my eyes and checked the clock. 2. 0 AM stared back at me in luminescent green. Another late night poring over case files, and the smallest of breaks had gotten away from me. I gathered my papers and switched off the desk lamp, locking up for the night and heading down to the car park. My phone buzzed as I started the engine. A text from Amelia. New lead on DarkWeb case. Urgent. Meet me at office. I sighed and reversed out of the spot, flipping the siren on to clear traffic. What now? We'd been chasing our tails for weeks on this one. 20 minutes later, I was striding through the front doors again. Amelia waved me over, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in hand. What is it? I asked, accepting one gratefully. We've had a breakthrough. Interpol forwarded intel from Cambodia. They found images from multiple secure sites geolocating back to the UK. I rubbed my eyes again. More of the same depraved material we'd been seeing, just from a new undisclosed location in our borders. Then Amelia dropped the real bomb. Some of the images, they feature recognizable backdrops. Orphanages in Phnom Penh. One image clearly shows a school sign, an English one. My stomach churned. We weren't dealing with faceless perverts abroad. This cut much closer to home, and targeting orphan children, the most vulnerable of victims. A cold anger grew in my chest. Get the text analyzing the metadata. I want locations, names, anything we can use. Amelia nodded, already on it. But there's one more thing. We may have an identity. One of the orphanage directors recognized an individual in some of the photos. British man called Kevin Smith volunteered at their facility a few years ago. She handed me a picture. I stared at eyes that seemed kind, yet hid dark depravity behind them. Crew-cut hair framed boyish features, an easy smile. The photo could have graced a charity brochure, but this man posed a far more insidious threat. I swallowed back bile. Get me everything we have on Kevin Smith. It's time we paid him a visit. The next morning, dawned with a lead thick enough to act on. My team assembled around the board as I laid out a profile of Smith. Mid-30s, no criminal record, worked variously as a youth football coach and teacher. Seemed the very picture of upstanding citizenry. But appearances could deceive, as his secret actions in Cambodia suggested. We would be watching keenly as the investigation progressed. For now, stealth was key. We didn't want to tip our hand before gathering stronger proof. I assigned traces on Smith's digital and financial records, surveillance of his home. Then I turned to Amelia. Let's go have chat with Mr. Smith. The game was afoot. Our surveillance van sat idling at the end of the street as Smith exited his front door, briefcase in hand. I nodded to Amelia and we stepped out, casually making our way over. Mr. Smith, I called as we approached. He turned, eyes widening at the sight of us. Can I help you, officers? Politeness couldn't hide the unease in his tone. I flashed my badge. We'd like a word, if you've got a minute. We're investigating criminal activity and you may be able to assist us. Smith glanced nervously around the quiet cul-de-sac. Of course, how can I help? We followed him inside, declining offers of tea as I took in the neatly furnished home. Photos on the mantel showed a smiling family. His charity work in Cambodia, also proudly displayed, also convincing. I got straight to the point. We're investigating the distribution of indecent images of minors on the DarkWeb. Some metadata traces back here to the UK. You spent time in Cambodia. Is there anyone from those trips who might bear a grudge? His guarded expression changed to one of concern. That's terrible. No, all my volunteer work was above board. Amelia spoke up. We have reason to believe you may know more than you're letting on, Mr. Smith. It's in your best interest to be fully truthful now. A sheen of sweat broke out across his forehead. His eyes darted at the doors and windows, calculating. Then a tight smile. I'm afraid I can't help you, officer. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a class to teach. He stepped forward meaningfully. I didn't budge. We'll be in touch, Mr. Smith. Best not to do anything foolish in the meantime. He gripped the door handle hard. Nostrils flared, but said nothing more as we let ourselves out. Amelia and I exchanged a look. Smith would bear close watching. Back at the office, I threw myself into expanding our knowledge of the suspect. Financial records showed no anomalies. Digital breadcrumbs led nowhere useful yet, but his orphanage trips had turned up new questions. I put in a call to Interpol Cambodia and was soon speaking to an agent there. Smith, you say? Yes. He volunteered regularly at one of the largest facilities here. Very well. Regarded. Her tone changed. Though there was an incident a few years back now. Allegations of inappropriate behavior with a teenage boy. Nothing that stuck, but he was asked not to return. My pulse quickened. Finally, a chink in the facade. Get me all records you have on that investigation. And let me know if any children from that orphanage went missing around that time. The thread was growing thinner, but with careful pulling, it might yet unravel to reveal the extent of Smith's crimes. The hunt was on. Rummaging through case files late one night, a single line caught my eye. Request for search warrant denied due to lack of evidence. I sat back, mind racing. If we could demonstrate stronger cause for suspicion, get a judge to authorize access to Smith's digital devices and home, we might crack this wide open. The orphanage incident report had proven inconclusive but raised questions. 2 days later, Interpol's response provided the linchpin. A teenage boy from that same orphanage had gone missing without a trace a month after Smith's sudden departure. It wasn't proof, but it was enough. We pored over maps charting Smith's movements abroad and here. Cross, referencing times and locations of disappearing children with his documented travels. The pattern wasn't definite, but it was damning. Open your laptop, I instructed Amelia as I peered over her shoulder. Let's see what else this tells us. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, running metadata, scraping scripts. deciphering timestamps and IP addresses buried in seized images. She paused. Take a look at this, Tom. 5 images originate from the same DarkWeb profile. And all geolocate to, I leaned in, Smith's home address. My pulse spiked. We had tied his digital activity directly to criminal acts on UK soil. I stood abruptly. Get Judge McKinley on the phone. Tell him it's urgent. Within the hour, we had warrants in hand and were mobilizing a raid for dusk. Adrenaline surged as our convoy raced over, tactical gear rustling. We burst through the front door, guns raised, ordering Smith to his knees. His pale, shaking form complied without a sound as we searched methodically. Under the floorboards in his study, we found a hollowed-out book and a flash drive stuffed with more depraved images than I could bear to see. Smith started weeping as the cuffs clicked shut. Please, you don't understand. I can't explain. But I had seen enough. Take him away, I told the uniforms grimly. In the annals of my career, this case would rank among the darkest. Yet, in apprehending our prime suspect, perhaps some small light had been brought. Justice was coming. It remained to be seen how much. I took a steadying breath before entering the interrogation room. Smith sat slumped, shoulders shaking periodically. No more masks now. His true nature was bared for me to confront. The door clicked shut heavily behind me. Smith looked up, eyes red, rimmed, and pleading. Agent Wilson, please, you have to believe me. I never hurt anyone. It was all online roleplay, I swear. His facade of innocence had well and truly fractured under the weight of our evidence. I clasped my hands on the table, leaning in. We both know that's a lie, Kevin. You assaulted a boy in Cambodia, made abused images of orphan children, and God knows how many more of your sick fantasies you acted on before we caught up to you. My voice remained calm yet harsh. I would not coddle a predator. He shook his head violently. No, it wasn't real. They wanted it. They all said so. Please, just let me go home to my family. They don't understand like you do. I recoiled in disgust. He still thought to manipulate me, persuade me of his twisted justifications even now. Enough. This interview is over until you're ready to confess your crimes in full. I pushed away, striding for the door when Smith slammed his fists down with a guttural yell. Turn around. Let me see the anger, the hatred in your eyes. Admit you want to hurt me like I hurt them. My hands clenched, every instinct screaming to wrap them around his scrawny neck. But that road led to darkness, and my duty was to justice, not vengeance. With tremendous effort, I reined in my fury and fixed him with a cold stare. The only one who'll be hurting you from now on is a judge and jury of your peers. Goodbye, Mr. Smith. Our battle is primarily against evil rather than persons. We seek to defeat wrongdoing, not people. Back in my office, I turned Dr. King's quote over in my mind, finding solace in its wisdom. Smith would get his due in a court of law. And I had a case to build. Justice was coming. The courtroom was packed as Smith was led inside, scanning the gallery with what might pass for defiance. I gave a curt nod to Amelia and the prosecution team before taking my seat, every piece of evidence at the ready. The opening statements laid it all out plainly. How Smith groomed vulnerable children abroad under guise of charity, used orphanage access to fuel his depraved appetites. How his double life led straight back to production and sharing of abusive materials. How our digital forensics traced it all incontrovertibly to him. Over 3 days, witness after brave witness recounted Smith's manipulated kindnesses that hid darker intentions. The medical examiner detailed scars some victims would carry forever. Interpol agents walked through their investigation and our cooperation across borders. And Amelia guided the jury clinically through screens of evidence we'd unearthed. As Smith took the stand, his mask broke completely. Spittle flew as he ranted about conspiracies and entrapment, how we were all out to get him. But the jury saw through it. I could tell. In her closing argument, the prosecutor seared the truth home. This man is a monster who inflicted untold suffering. Now it is time for justice. The jury filed out. An hour later, they returned. Guilty on all counts. Gasps and sobs rang through the room as Smith was led away yelling obscenities. He would not see light again for many years. Time rather than balm for the wounds he caused. After, I met privately with one young man who testified. "Thank you for not giving up on us," he said through tears. In that moment, all the darkness receded, replaced by warmth of lives healed and protected going forward. My work was ending, but its purpose remained.